When a wealthy guest pushes a black janitor into a pool at a luxury hotel, he learns that karma swims faster than his ego. Maria Jackson had worked at the luxury Palms Hotel for 15 years, maintaining its pristine pools and grounds with quiet dignity. At 52, she took pride in her work, even if some guests looked right through her. On this particular summer afternoon, she was skimming leaves from the VIP pool area, her movements careful and precise in her navy blue uniform. Richard Sterling III, a hedge fund manager staying in the presidential suite, lounged by the pool with his entourage, his voice carrying across the deck as he boasted about his latest acquisition. The ice in his cocktail clinked as he gestured, his designer swimwear probably worth more than Maria's monthly salary. When Maria's pool skimmer accidentally dripped water near Sterling's imported Italian leather loafers, he exploded. "Watch what you're doing," he snapped, rising from his chaise lounge. Maria apologized softly, but Sterling wasn't finished. His face reddened as he berated her in front of other guests. "I said I'm sorry, sir," Maria repeated, her voice steady despite her humiliation. That's when Sterling did the unthinkable. He shoved her, hard. Maria, caught off balance, tumbled into the pool fully clothed. Laughter erupted from Sterling's group while other guests watched in shocked silence. The chlorinated water cascaded from Maria's uniform as she pulled herself from the pool, each drop hitting the concrete like tiny thunderclaps in her ears. Her shoes, now waterlogged, made squelching sounds that seemed to echo across the suddenly hushed pool deck. The weight of her soaked clothing pulled at her shoulders, but it was nothing compared to the weight of the stares from the gathered crowd. Sophie Martinez's fingers trembled slightly as she held her phone steady, continuing to record. The 12-year-old had been raised in a household where her mother, Elena, had taught her about the importance of documenting injustice. From her shaded corner table, Sophie had been quietly capturing Sterling's behavior all afternoon. His rudeness to the waitstaff, his loud phone conversations full of casual cruelty, and now this appalling act of violence against Maria. The security team's response was swift but complicated by Sterling's status at the hotel. 2 guards in crisp black uniforms approached the scene, their faces professionally neutral, but their body language tense. James Chen, the lead security officer, had known Maria for over a decade. She had always brought him homemade tamales during the holidays, and he'd helped her grandson with math homework in the break room. Now, he struggled to maintain his professional composure as Sterling dismissed him with an imperious wave. "It was an accident," Sterling declared, his voice carrying the practiced smoothness of someone accustomed to rewriting reality in his favor. He stood there in his designer swimwear, a $500 cocktail still in his hand, addressing the gathering crowd as if he were at a board meeting. She lost her balance. Anyone could see that. A few of his sycophantic companions nodded in agreement, but their laughter had died away, replaced by an uncertain shuffling of feet. Other guests around the pool had risen from their loungers, phones discreetly recording, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. Mrs. Henderson, a retired schoolteacher who visited the hotel every summer, clutched her romance novel to her chest and loudly announced, "I saw him push her." That was no accident. Her voice carried across the pool deck, causing Sterling to turn sharply in her direction, his practiced smile slipping for a moment. Maria, throughout all of this, maintained a dignity that seemed to rise from her very core. She didn't cry out, didn't cause a scene, and didn't give Sterling the satisfaction of seeing her break. Water streamed from her gray-streaked hair, which had come loose from its neat bun. But her eyes remained forward, her back straight as an arrow. She had survived too much in her life to let this man's cruelty bend her. Behind the front desk, Aisha Rahman, the assistant manager on duty, was already calling her superior. Her fingers flew across the computer keyboard as she documented the incident, her customer service smile replaced by grim determination. She had always respected Maria's work ethic and quiet strength, and now she was determined to ensure this incident wouldn't be swept under the rug like so many others. The younger pool attendants, Juan and Marcus, rushed forward with towels, But Maria gently waved them away. "I'll change my uniform," she said, quietly, her voice steady despite the public humiliation. "The pool still needs attending." This simple statement, delivered with such professional focus, made Sterling's actions seem even more petty and cruel in comparison. Sophie's video captured it all. The subtle tremor in Maria's hands as she smoothed back her wet hair. The supportive hand of James Chen on her shoulder that she gently brushed aside. The growing murmurs of disapproval from the crowd. And most importantly, Sterling's smug expression that would soon come back to haunt him. The young girl had been raised on stories of her mother's civil rights cases, and she knew that sometimes the most powerful weapon against injustice was simply the truth, documented without filters or editorializing. As Maria walked away, her wet shoes marking her path across the expensive tile, a transformation seemed to take place among the witnesses. The artificial social barriers of the luxury hotel, the unspoken divisions between guests and staff, rich and working class, began to crumble. A woman in a designer swimsuit offered her beach wrap. An elderly man stepped forward to confront Sterling. The pool area had become a battlefield of sorts, not of violence, but of human dignity against entitled cruelty. Sterling, still trying to maintain control of the situation, returned to his lounge chair, though his usual audience had dispersed. He pulled out his phone, probably to call his lawyer or PR team, unaware that his carefully curated world was already beginning to unravel. The video was uploading, the witnesses were talking, and the wheels of justice, both legal and social, were beginning to turn. In the employee locker room, Maria finally allowed herself a moment of privacy. She changed into her spare uniform with methodical movements, her wet clothes forming a puddle on the floor. She looked in the mirror and saw not a victim, but a survivor. She had raised 3 children alone, sent 2 to college, and helped countless guests over her years of service. No man, no matter how wealthy, could take that dignity from her. She pulled her hair back into a fresh bun, straightened her name tag, and prepared to return to work. After all, she had 8 more hours in her shift, and Maria Jackson had never left a job unfinished. The carefully constructed world of Richard Sterling III began to crumble with the soft chime of a social media notification. He was still lounging by the pool, basking in what he believed to be another demonstration of his untouchable status, when his phone first buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. The steady stream of notifications quickly became a torrent, each one representing another crack in his foundation of privilege. Sophie Martinez sat cross-legged on her hotel room bed, her mother Elena standing behind her as they watched the video's view count climb exponentially. Elena, a veteran civil rights attorney who had taken on corporate giants before, recognized the potential impact immediately. Her daughter's steady hands had captured everything: Sterling's aggressive stance, the deliberate shove, Maria's fall, and the crucial aftermath. But more importantly, the video had captured the raw power dynamics at play, the wealthy guest's casual cruelty against a hard-working employee's dignity. Down in the hotel's administrative offices, General Manager Thomas Chen was already in crisis management mode. His computer screen displayed multiple email windows, one from the corporate office, another from the hotel's legal team, and several from news organizations requesting comments. The security footage from 6 different angles played on a separate monitor, each view damning in its clarity. Chen had always prided himself on running a prestigious establishment where both guests and staff were treated with respect. Now, his hotel's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Sterling's company's PR team was the first to reach him. Sarah Williams, the head of crisis communications, didn't bother with pleasantries. "Mr. Sterling, please tell me you're somewhere private," she began, her voice tight with controlled panic. "The video is everywhere. CNN just picked it up. Your board chairman is trying to reach you." Sterling's face, already flushed from expensive cocktails, turned a deeper shade of red as he hurried toward his suite, finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of his actions. In the employee break room, Maria sat quietly with a cup of tea, surrounded by supportive colleagues. Her phone kept lighting up with messages from her children. They had already seen the video. Her youngest, Michael, a law student at State, was particularly insistent about pressing charges. "Mama, this is assault. This is wrong. Let me help." Maria touched the screen gently, proud of her son's passion for justice, but still processing her own feelings about becoming an unwilling symbol in a viral moment. Elena Martinez was already mobilizing her law firm's resources. Her partner, David Wong, had immediately recognized the broader implications. "This isn't just about one incident," he said during their emergency video call. "This is about systematic abuse of power in the service industry. We can use this to push for better protections." Elena nodded, thinking of all the cases they'd seen where similar incidents had gone unreported because victims couldn't risk losing their jobs. The hotel's lobby was transforming into an impromptu media center. Local news vans began appearing outside, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical flowers. Inside, reporters typed furiously on laptops, while photographers tested their equipment. The story had struck a nerve. It was more than just another viral video. It was a crystallization of class tensions and workplace dignity in an era of increasing wealth disparity. Sterling's phone call with his board of directors was brutal in its efficiency. "Richard," the chairman began, "we're calling an emergency session. The company's stock is already down 3 points. Our biggest client just called threatening to pull their pension fund management contract. This isn't going away." Sterling's attempts to dismiss the incident as trivial were met with stony silence. His carefully cultivated network of influence was revealing itself to be remarkably fragile in the face of public outrage. Social media analysis firms tracked the spread of the hashtag number Justice for Maria across platforms. What began as local outrage quickly became national news, then international. Comments poured in from hotel workers around the world, sharing their own stories of abuse and discrimination. Labor rights organizations seized the moment to highlight the need for stronger protections for service industry workers. Back in her office, Elena Martinez prepared for a different kind of battle. She knew from experience that cases like these often faced subtle resistance. Powerful people had powerful friends. But as she reviewed Sophie's video for the 10th time, she smiled. The evidence was unambiguous. The public was engaged. And for once, the timing was perfect. She began drafting documents that would not only address Maria's case, but potentially help establish precedent for future worker protections. Sterling's suite had become his prison. His calls went straight to voicemail as former friends and business associates distanced themselves. His social media accounts were flooded with angry messages. The same people who had laughed at his jokes by the pool were now giving interviews about how they had always found his behavior problematic. The isolation of the privileged, when their privilege suddenly evaporates, can be absolute. As evening approached, the hotel's atmosphere had transformed entirely. Guests who had witnessed the incident were giving statements to hotel security and police officers. The video had been shared by celebrities and politicians, each adding their own commentary about respect, dignity, and accountability. What Sterling had dismissed as a trivial moment of asserting his perceived authority had become a catalyst for a much larger conversation about power, respect, and justice in modern society. 7 minutes had passed between Sterling pushing Maria into the pool and Sophie's video beginning its viral journey across the internet. In those 7 minutes, the power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Sterling would soon learn that in an interconnected world, karma moves at the speed of social media, and justice sometimes arrives wearing a school uniform and carrying a smartphone. The following hours unfolded like a masterclass in how quickly privilege can crumble in the modern age. Sterling's company's stock didn't just drop, it plummeted. The trading algorithms that monitored social media sentiment had detected the viral storm surrounding their CEO, and institutional investors were already moving to protect their interests. By the time the New York Stock Exchange closed, Sterling Investments had lost over $2 billion in market capitalization. In the hotel's largest conference room, now converted into an impromptu command center, Elena Martinez sat with Maria Jackson and the hotel's legal team. The room hummed with purposeful energy as documents were prepared and statements carefully crafted. Maria, now dressed in a borrowed business suit provided by Elena, listened intently as various options were presented to her. The hotel's corporate office had already authorized a substantial settlement offer, but Elena advised patience. "They're scared," Elena explained, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose as she reviewed another document. "And they should be. This isn't just about one incident anymore. We're looking at systemic issues of guest behavior toward service staff across their entire hotel chain." Maria nodded, thinking of all the times she'd seen colleagues endure similar, if less dramatic, indignities in silence. Meanwhile, Sterling's world continued to implode with mechanical precision. His board of directors, meeting virtually in an emergency session, had moved from damage control to survival mode. The video had sparked investigations into Sterling's past behavior, and former employees were coming forward with their own stories. His pattern of treating service workers as beneath his notice had finally caught up with him. Effective immediately, the board chairman announced via video conference, his face grave. Richard Sterling, III, is being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Sterling's protests were cut short as his access to company systems was revoked in real time. His company phone went dark, his email stopped syncing, and his corporate credit cards were suspended. The man who had started his day as a powerful CEO found himself suddenly cut off from the tools of his power. Local police, responding to multiple witness statements, arrived to take formal statements about the assault. Detective Sarah Rodriguez interviewed Maria with professional courtesy, her notebook filling with detailed accounts not just of the pool incident, but of Sterling's behavior throughout his stay. Hotel security provided multiple camera angles of the incident, each more damning than the last. "Mr. Sterling," Detective Rodriguez stated flatly, finding him in his suite, "we need to discuss the assault charges being filed." Sterling's expensive lawyer, rushed in from his firm's local office, sat silent as the detective read his client's rights. The charge wasn't just assault. It was being classified as a bias incident due to the circumstances and witness statements about Sterling's preceding comments. The hotel management, led by Thomas Chen, was in full damage control mode, but not in the way Sterling might have hoped. Instead of trying to minimize the incident, they were actively cooperating with authorities and implementing immediate policy changes. A new guest code of conduct was being drafted, with clear consequences for abusive behavior toward staff. Maria's promotion to supervisor, a position she had been qualified for but overlooked, was announced with immediate effect. Social media continued its relentless pace. Corporate communication experts analyzed Sterling's downfall in real time, using it as a case study in how not to behave in the modern age. His face appeared on national news broadcasts, his actions dissected by panels of experts discussing everything from workplace violence to class discrimination. Hashtags multiplied. #Justice for Maria spawned #Service Workers' Rights, and #Hotel Workers Unite. In the hotel's employee break room, a different kind of revolution was taking place. Staff members who had long endured similar treatment felt emboldened to speak up. The hotel's HR department was flooded with previously unreported incidents. The property's union representative worked overtime documenting statements and demands for improved security measures and guest behavior policies. Elena Martinez's law firm had transformed the case into something larger than a single incident. They were preparing a class action lawsuit against the hotel chain, not for Maria's incident specifically, but for what they argued was a systematic failure to protect workers from guest abuse. The hotel, sensing the shifting winds, was already negotiating to be part of the solution rather than the target. Sterling's personal life began to unravel as quickly as his professional one. His private club memberships were quietly suspended. Charity boards sent polite but firm requests for his resignation. Society friends suddenly had scheduling conflicts. His daughter's private school principal called to discuss concerns about the upcoming parent fundraiser. The scaffolding of privilege that had supported his lifestyle was collapsing. By evening, Maria sat in her newly assigned supervisor's office, looking out over the same pool where the incident had occurred. The space had been quickly reorganized for her, with a new nameplate on the desk reading, Maria Jackson Pool and Recreation Services Supervisor. She thought about how a single act of cruelty had backfired so spectacularly, leading not just to justice for her, but potentially improving conditions for workers throughout the industry. The final blow to Sterling's day came as his own family's foundation issued a statement distancing themselves from his actions and announcing a new initiative to support hospitality workers' education and rights. 7 minutes of arrogance had cost him his reputation, his position, and his standing in the very society he had once thought he ruled. As he was escorted from the hotel by security, followed by the flash of cameras, he finally began to understand that true power lies not in the ability to push others down, but in the dignity with which one treats every human being. 1 month had passed since the incident that transformed both Maria Jackson's life and the hospitality industry's approach to worker protection. The luxury Palms Hotel's VIP pool area gleamed in the morning sun as Maria conducted her daily inspection, now wearing a crisp, white supervisor's uniform with gold trim. Her morning rounds were different now. Instead of cleaning the pools herself, she managed a team of pool attendants, ensuring both guest satisfaction and staff safety. The changes went far beyond Maria's promotion. The hotel had become a model for worker protection in the hospitality industry. New signs posted discreetly around the property outlined the mutual respect policy, making it clear that abusive staff would result in immediate removal and permanent banning from all affiliated properties. Security cameras had been upgraded, and staff now wore small, discreet panic buttons, not because they expected trouble, but because the hotel had committed to protecting its employees. Elena Martinez's law firm had successfully established the Maria Jackson Foundation for Hospitality Workers' Rights. Funded initially by the substantial settlement from both the hotel chain and Sterling personally, the foundation provided legal support, educational scholarships, and advocacy for service industry workers nationwide. Maria served on its board of directors, her quiet wisdom helping shape policies that would protect others from similar mistreatment. The foundation's first initiative had been to create a certification program for hotels and resorts, properties that implemented comprehensive worker protection policies and maintained a clear record of addressing incidents could earn the Jackson Certification for Worker Dignity. Within the first month, over 200 hotels had applied for certification, recognizing that in the post-incident world, guests actually sought out properties that protected their workers. Richard Sterling III's fall from grace had been both swift and comprehensive. His resignation from Sterling Investments had become permanent, and the company had rebranded itself under new leadership. The criminal charges for assault had been settled with a plea deal that included community service, specifically working in hotel housekeeping under supervision. Sterling's first day of service had been covered by local news, showing him struggling with the physical demands of the job he had once dismissed as beneath him. Sophie Martinez, whose video had sparked the transformation, had been changed by the experience too. The 12-year-old had started a social media campaign called Respect in Service that encouraged young people to document and report incidents of worker abuse. Her mother, Elena, had helped her turn it into a proper non-profit organization. And Sophie now gave speeches at schools about standing up against injustice. The hotel industry had undergone a subtle but significant shift. Trade magazines ran features on worker protection programs. Insurance companies offered reduced premiums to properties with comprehensive anti-abuse policies. The annual Hospitality Industry Conference had made worker dignity its central theme. with Maria giving the keynote speech about her experience and the changes it had inspired. In the employee break room, now renovated and renamed the Jackson Commons, Maria held monthly mentoring sessions for new employees. She shared not just her story, but her years of wisdom about maintaining dignity and professionalism in challenging situations. The room itself had become a symbol of change, with comfortable furniture, a small library of professional development resources, and a wall of photographs showing staff achievements and celebrations. The viral video had found its way into training programs across the service industry. Management schools used it in their ethics classes, hospitality programs included it in their curriculum, and corporate retreats showed it during sensitivity training. But they didn't just show the incident. They showed what happened after, how one moment of cruelty had sparked a movement for positive change. Maria's family had been transformed as well. Her son, Michael, the law student, had switched his focus to labor law and was now interning at Elena's firm. Her daughter Carmen had started a podcast about worker rights that had quickly gained a following. Her youngest, Anna, had been inspired to study hotel management, determined to become part of the new generation of leaders who understood the value of every employee. The pool area where the incident occurred had been subtly redesigned. A small plaque, tastefully mounted on a decorative stone, read, "On this spot in 2024, dignity prevailed over discrimination, and justice came in waves." Guests often posed for photos with it, sharing them with hashtags that kept the movement growing. The hotel had turned what could have been a source of shame into a symbol of progress. Sterling's former friends and business associates had learned their own lessons. Several had become vocal advocates for worker rights, perhaps out of genuine revelation, perhaps out of self-preservation. The Sterling incident, as it became known in business schools, was cited as a turning point in corporate culture, the moment when social media and social justice combined to prove that no one was too powerful to face consequences. 1 year to the day after the incident, Maria stood at a podium in the hotel's grand ballroom, addressing the first annual conference for workplace dignity. Looking out over an audience of hotel workers, executives, lawyers, and activists, she spoke about transformation. "Sometimes," she said, her voice clear and confident, "justice comes not in the moment of injury, but in what we build from that moment. Every wave starts with a single drop of water." The ripples of change continued to spread. Other industries began examining their own practices. Legislative bodies considered new worker protection laws. And every day, in hotels across the country, workers went about their duties with a new sense of security and respect, knowing that dignity was no longer a privilege for the wealthy, but a right for everyone. As Maria finished her daily rounds, pausing to chat with both staff and guests, she reflected on how 7 minutes had changed everything. The pool where she had once been humiliated now sparkled with possibility, each ripple a reminder that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best changes. Richard Sterling III had wanted to make a splash, and he had, just not the one he intended.